Welcome, everybody. This is Reopening Christianity. So I guess tonight is our grand reopening. New venue, new place. It's a housewarming. I think it's, we're all family here, but it's a bit of a housewarming, new space. Hope you brought some great gifts. I don't see any here yet, but I'm sure they're coming. I think we're going to start just a quick little reflection. It's called it's called Christianity Reopening because this past couple of years, has been probably tough. If we're talking pandemic, we're talking all kinds of situations. And so everything is opening up. And then all of a sudden, what was normal isn't normal. We have a new normal. So what is that new normal? So we're going to reopen it. And don't we get a say? Don't we have a voice in what that new normal can look like? I think we do. I think we can. I think we should. I'm going to start out. I'm going to introduce ourselves. I'm Dave Harrison. I've been at this church since the beginning of time. No, since 1994. So I moved to Windsor at that time with my wife and two, at the time, young children. And so I've been around to know that, enough to know that if we're going to have a grand reopening, I want to be invited to the party. So.
Hello, my name's Alex. I've been with WCF for about 3.5 years now. You might see me on Sundays holding the door for you. Pretty excited to get into this tonight, but I will let Kim go ahead and introduce herself first.
I'm Kimberly Taylor. We've been here for... How old's my daughter? 17 years, about. I don't know how much you want to know. I'm married, 3 teenagers. I love my teenagers. They're amazing. And this topic really excites me too, our one for tonight. And just as a little observation, we were just kind of gathering here, the guys and myself, and I observed something that I thought was kind of funny. And how I was sitting here, I'm like, okay, Dave, and then Alex and me, and I'm looking at our stuff. And I'm like, Dave, I want to be like Dave. I love this. I love the layout and the paper. And then
Old school.
Right? And then I look at Alex, and he just has his phone. And like, I want to be like that, right? And then I'm like, oh, I have one paper and a phone. So I have like a little bit of both. And it just so speaks to like our ages and like our coming into technology and how I can't really let go of paper yet, but I'm learning.
I'm never letting go. I know, we all change. We're going from glory to glory. I get that.
Anyways, I just thought it was funny.
Old
and
school.
Dave told me to share that, so.
So in a world filled with many good questions and answers, what we're trying to say here as we're reopening Christianity, Jesus Christ is the best answer. And so as we keep our eyes focused that way, and as we prayed tonight, one of the prayers that we had was, let's not look to the left or to the right at the distractions that would be there. This isn't normal for us, I can tell you that. All 3 of us were sitting there going, so, we need the Holy Spirit to show up. We need God to show up because we don't have all the answers. What we can do is facilitate and talk with you. And where we're going with this in the reopening, there's going to be 5 sessions, and this is the first of those sessions. And so we have some questions that we want to ask you.
Okay, so the first big question for tonight is, am I moving forward or going backwards? Now, I feel like over the last 3 years with COVID, has everybody here said they want to go backwards at some point? Yeah? Okay, I've been one of those people. But what I found is a lot of people were saying, I want to go back to normal. I want things to go back to normal. And speaking with my wife, we were talking about this idea of going back to normal as if before COVID, everything was normal. And I think that when we're faced with challenges, we always want to go back to what's comfortable. And as we go through today's session, you'll see that we aren't the only people who have been like this. One of the main topics of tonight is Exodus, when the Israelites were promised to come out of Egypt. And when they finally did get out of Egypt, they wanted to go back. And so I just want everybody to ask yourselves if you are looking forward or if you are trying to go backwards.
Anybody have thoughts? We're throwing this out to you. Do you think we are? You are? If you want to be very transparent, are you moving forward or backwards? Kim? Hmm?
I think for myself, sometimes I look at my life during the COVID pandemic and everything, and like you said, wanting to move backwards, and yet still knowing that you have to move forwards. Sometimes moving forward can be a little bit scary because there's an unknown, whereas going backwards, you're going back to something that you're familiar with, and so you find, for me, I find myself like wanting the good old days. You know, in my ministry pre-COVID, we did a lot of dramas, we did a lot of different things, different events, and it was so much fun. And it was normal, it was comfortable, so wanting to go back to the good old days kind of, makes you feel better. Moving forward, there's an unknown, you have to go forward, but because you're not quite sure what's around the corner, for me, a little bit hesitant.
Isn't there an incredible opportunity, though? We have the advantage to be able to look back, and sometimes we look back nostalgically. I'm reminded of a time. I have 3 brothers and a sister, and sometimes at family gatherings, you sit around and you're talking about the old, I'll call them the war stories or the adventures or the misadventures we had as a family. And my youngest brother is 12 years younger than me. So when we grew up, there was the 4 of us before the 5th, my brother came along. And, we did things. We had a camper trailer. And so we would drag this trailer behind a car, and we'd all pile into the car and go all over Ontario camping. And, we had flat tires and broken axles and this, that, and the other thing. And we had to ship a trailer home from Sault Ste. Marie one time. And we have all these stories about all these so-called adventures that we had. And we laugh and tell things. And then my one brother said one time, he says, you know what? I feel deprived. I went, what? Deprived? Why? He says, you guys have all these great adventures, all these great things, all these great memories. And they were, and they are, and I'm sure there was some struggle in there somewhere, especially for my parents. But, and then I looked at him and I said, Tom, you've been to Disneyland, California, Hawaii. By the time we got all out of there, my parents had enough disposable income to do some things instead of drag a trailer up to Point Pelee or something like that. And so it's all in the perspective, is what I'm trying to say. So we can look back nostalgically, but you also have to look back realistically. And we have an incredible opportunity going forward now to maybe remake or reshape or reopen. Okay, when you reopen a business, probably you've done some renovations, so maybe we can do some renovations within ourselves and take what's good. By all means, take all those good things and the good memories and capitalize them, maybe renew them in some way, shape, or form. But reshape them and make them now. Make them, like me, modern, right?
Yeah, that's really good. So I'm going to pose the next question. So if you could go back in time, which day would you choose and why? So if you could go back in time, which day would you choose and why? And so my day would be the day I got saved. So I was 23, and it was just, the first time really experiencing, his peace, his presence. Like, I'll never forget that. And it was just such an amazing moment. I had my eyes closed for I don't know how long. And then I was outside sitting in a vehicle when I got saved. And I remember opening my eyes and literally everything looked brighter. The sky was bluer, the leaves on the trees were greener, which is kind of crazy sounding, but it's true. Like it was just a super powerful moment. So that was mine. That was mine and why. So if you could go back in time, which day would you choose and why? Anybody would like to? Yeah.
I would go back 10 years. I'd still be married. My father wouldn't be senile, and I would still have my brother, a relationship with my brother. And all of that is gone now. So if I could go back there again, you can't, but you got to make a forward march from where you're at and go past that and move into a new life. But I look back on that, and then I miss all those situations that aren't there anymore for various reasons.
Yeah, and I was talking with my husband, and thank you for sharing that. Because I was talking with my husband, and I can think of just different relationships and things like that. And what I was telling him was being there's just been many dysfunctional relationships that I've been in, right? But there's certain things about those relationships that I actually miss. And it makes me sad that those things aren't there anymore, but if I hold on to all of that, then I'm also holding on to the dysfunction or the pain or the sadness or whatever. And moving forward is so important. Just to allow God to heal and to process us. I've heard that, there's one thing certain, well, no, actually there's two things certain about life, certainties in life is one, we're going to die. Two, things constantly are changing. And so if we're holding on to something so tightly, we're gonna miss out on the changes because we're so stuck back here, and it's sad, and we have to mourn, and we have to process with the Lord and allow him to heal, or we do keep looking back. But in the meantime, as we're looking back, we're missing the present and we're missing the future. So as painful as those things are, and again, thank you for sharing, I think we miss out on that peace and the healing and the joy of the Lord, Pastor Larry.
Right away is when you ask the question, in my mind I'm thinking, okay, I'd like to go back to probably a time frame when I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life. And that's leaving home when I was 16. And then I'm thinking, okay, so if I wouldn't have done that, what else would have changed as a result? And as I'm processing this in my mind, just in fast motion, it's like I come to the realization that, good possibility I would have never have met Colleen. I would have never have been a missionary in Bolivia. I possibly would have never have been a pastor ever, and potentially never have moved here. So, ultimately, when I think about it, the what if sounds attractive for a split second, for a moment, but then when I really meditate on it, then I wouldn't be me.
Right. That's good. I just want to add something similar, Pastor Larry. When I look back at some of the decisions that I made as a young person, I remember very clearly God speaking to my heart when I was a new Christian, and I remember thinking to myself, if I never, and was about to, in my mind, before I could even complete my thought process, God interrupted that statement. If I never, and then he said, I have made your crooked path straight. So here I was looking at some decisions that I was making in the past and thinking, okay, maybe they weren't so bad because if I never did this, I would have. And immediately God knew where I was going with my thought, and he said, I made your crooked path straight. So regardless of the decisions that I made, when I came to know the Lord, the goodness that followed me after that was because he chose and he came into my life. I surrendered my life to him, and all the goodness that came is because my crooked path was being made straight by him.
Derek, and then we will move on. I would love to hear from each of you and an answer for all these questions, but we would literally, I don't know, how long do you think we'd all be here? We have 9 other questions, y'all. So, and an 11-minute video. So,
Coffee?
yeah. Go ahead, Derek.
So, same kind of lines of Pastor Larry says, sometimes we want to go back and fix something. But one of the moments I can remember the most was 6 months about after, I made my decision to follow Christ. I was in Florida. But in this time, it was about 6 months after my baptism, and I was struggling speaking in tongues. Holy Spirit was sort of like this mind battle of what's happening. So I ended up going to this conference. I'll say it like that, conference. And there was lots of people. If there was 40,000 people, there was a lot of people. And what they were doing is they were bringing people up, tons of people. And they're all on the stage. And the pastor, preacher was, he was a healing minister. But what he did is he just, it was this power, and he moved his hand and everybody fell. And I was sitting, near the top of the concourse. We got there a little later. I was out. I walked out. Completely like, what did I just see? I didn't believe it because it was just 100 people, just like, it was like a dominoes. And I paced around, and I was like, man, you need to kind of, I don't know. It was really young in my relationship. Didn't really know how to ask, questions, but I was like, I don't know. That was hard. So I sat back down, and then he had talked about, for the ones who did not, or not believing in this, or struggling in this, I'm going to pray for you. 2 weeks later, I'm at home. And after actually, Dr. David Chukka, is that how you say his name? Chukka? He reminded me of something similar to what he had. That he called it an ink block or an ink thing on Sunday morning. I had the same experience. I remember it was about 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, sunny outside. But I was still in bed, the day off. But I was just relaxing, and then all of a sudden, I was relaxing, but I was maybe still sleeping, but I remember just the morning. And I was on my back, and then I remember the brightest light shining. I mean, it was so bright, but I can feel inside, and I saw this black darkness come out. And I saw like hands, and I saw long hair, and I saw the shine. I couldn't see the face, but it was just bright, bright light. And I felt everything ripping out, this ink, black ink ripping out of me. And I felt like I was 2-3 feet off the bed. And I have no idea, but that's what I felt like. And then, but it ripped right out, and then he's like, he took it away. And at that moment, it was like I kind of understood. And tongues and everything it came in. It came in, it worked, right? That moment, I will never forget. I always want to go back to it. It was the shining bright light. It was the lightness I felt after. Everything pulled away. Because if I can go back into history and all that stuff was pulled out, I was playing with, Ouija boards and I actually had a dynamic, I felt a dynamic spirit go into me, and like when I was 17 or 18, I knew what that was. But it was ripped right out of me. And then just the understanding and everything came in right at that moment. So sometimes we have to go back in really, really good experiences just to remember where it all started.
Thanks, Derek. So as we're thinking about the reopening of Christianity and creating that new normal, what if we could use this time to refocus? What if we could use this time to come out on the other side of it, and that's the now, and come out as a stronger representative for Christ? This is a time to reimagine maybe where we've been. And we have the nostalgic memories. We have some good, we have some bad ones, we have some tough ones, we've had some struggles. But now I think there's an opportunity for us here to refocus and maybe come out on the other side of it and be that strong representative for Christ, because I see it as an opportunity. And the opportunity is now. And with that, I think we can roll the video.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the discussion portion of tonight. The first question of tonight is: would you describe yourself as a Christian, and explain? Does anybody want to start? Okay, I'll start. I would say yes. I describe myself as a Christian until I am behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Oh, that's true. That's good.
I definitely struggle with this question. I think on the surface, I would, but it's definitely something. When I dive deeper into the question, I start thinking, okay, well, what does a Christian mean? And okay, well, a Christian means a follower of Christ. And then that's when the more questions come up. Like, how well do I follow Christ? And it is good that our God is forgiving, because I fail at this on the daily. But I think with his forgiveness, as long as we continue to strive to become more like Christ on a day-to-day basis, I think that it's okay that I consider myself a Christian. You guys want to? Does anybody else?
I just don't think it's a one and done.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, I do consider myself a Christian, but it's never over. It's never done. It's process. Remember Lance Wallnau, many of you have been here before, he always said process, process, process. And that's who we are. We are a work in process. Yes, we are a Christian. Yes, I will, maybe you won't. I will likely fail at things going forward. Hopefully not. Hopefully less and less and less and less as we go forward. I'm enjoying the journey. In so many ways, I'm enjoying the journey more so now because I realize how important it is. Plus, from a testimony point of view, I've seen him be faithful in so many ways in so many areas of my life. So if I am looking back, like we were just talking about, I can see where he's been there. He's shored me up when I couldn't do it myself, when I didn't do it myself. He's been there time and time again. And if you could even look back, each person here, do a little inventory, a little bit, and say, when has he been there to help you? And then that helps you going forward. That gives you that faith. You're faithful with little, he'll make you faithful with more. And I see that in little ways, and it's a process throughout the years.
Yeah, real quick, because I want to keep going here, but I don't know about you guys' brains, but my brain, when I get asked a question like that, it's almost like my perfectionism flesh wants to now I have to prove it. I have to prove, do I consider myself a Christian? Yeah. But now I have to prove to myself, to you, to God, that I'm an actual Christian. And God's like, time out. Christianity is not about perfection. If it was about perfection, we wouldn't need forgiveness. So I started asking myself the questions like, do I do my best to follow Christ? Yes. Do I do my best to love him with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength? I do my best. Yes. Do I do my best to love others as I love myself? Yes. Great Commission, yep. Discipleship, I do my best. I do my best. I do my best. It's that maturing process, right? So it's not that being a Christian doesn't mean perfection. It means, are we doing our best? Are we letting him mature us? When he disciplines us, are we having hissy fits? okay, once in a while, fine. But you know what I mean? Like on a regular basis, are we pushing him away? Are we continuing to walk in disobedience? Or are we really trying to are we really trying to obey? Are we really, are we just doing our best? And I think if we can say yes, then you can say yes. That yes, you are a Christian. Because the enemy, right? Anyways, I could go on, but I won't. I don't like the enemy.
Okay, so what memories or experiences fill you with nostalgia? We've sort of been into that a little bit. Does anybody want to weigh into that one? I can speak from a testimony point of view again. It comes to getting saved and being completely unaware of what could have been before me. When I got saved, it was a situation. My wife was saved before I was, and she was going to a church, and so she said to me, "Well, don't you want to know what I'm doing and your kids are doing?" Yeah, okay. I guess I got guilted, or I felt guilted into that. So I went, okay. And then there was the scenario where it was the worship leader, and she was up there and she was telling a story, relating a story about how she would sit on her father's knee and she could say anything to her dad, and her dad would listen, and maybe couldn't supply them as a natural father, but would listen and be receptive to that. And I sat there, and I could then I had a great relationship with my dad, so I could relate to that a little bit. And I know that isn't always the case, and I'm very blessed in that way. And I don't take that for granted. But I could, because I could now relate to how I could relate to my earthly father, now how much more so with my heavenly father. And that was what tipped it over the edge. And then, of course, I was coming through the filter of wanting to have that kind of relationship with my children. So, going into all that, and that was when I surrendered. And when I did, it was a little bit like a wave, and I just rode the wave for a little while as a baby and a new Christian and learning. But again, it was process, and I was a baby Christian at the time. But that's so. I guess I'm talking. What do you say about what memories or experiences fill you with nostalgia?
Probably could have talked loud enough, but okay. What fills me with nostalgia is just my journey so far since being a follower of Christ, and just how the path as I am obedient, there's just growth, and there's relationships, and there's community. And I guess just looking back from where I started, where I was like crying out about being lonely and not feeling like I was growing in my relationship with Christ, it's to this point where I am now, and it's just keep going. And I just looking from that starting point, and that's just like, wow. And there's still so much ahead.
Thank you.
Hello. This isn't spiritual, but what's nostalgic for me is, do you guys know the game Majora's Mask? Zelda Majora's Mask? Zelda? Yeah.
I know Zelda.
I'm way too old for that.
Okay. Well, my favorite memory as a child is sitting, it was raining outside. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, and I was watching my older brother and sister play Zelda Majora's Mask. And my mom brought down crackers and cheese, and we were all in the bed together. And I was just watching them play the game, and like it has the little songs that play with it. And yeah, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't go back to any decision I made. All the decisions that I made brought me to where I am now. I don't regret anything. So I would go back to being a little kid, watching my older siblings play Majora's Mask, eating crackers and cheese.
That's excellent. Do we want to run? I'll run. Excuse me.
When I think of like nostalgic experiences, I don't necessarily maybe think of like a specific experience, but as I was kind of thinking through this question, one thing that stood out to me that was like a common denominator was that a lot of the things in my life that were important or kind of were remembered were things where I was participating in something that was bigger than me, where it's like part of a team or part of a group of people working for a collective goal. So I find, I mean, at least for me, it's not necessarily maybe a specific thing, but just that when you're working with other people towards a collective goal, it just seems to be more rewarding and it seems to be more memorable.
That's good. I think I'm supposed to ask the next question. Give me a minute, y'all.
Gentleman here.
Oh, okay. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. When I was spoke in tongues for the first time, I didn't get back to my seat before the devil screamed in my ear, "You sound like a chipmunk." He had me until I went up there, but he wanted me back, and he wanted to reel me back in again. And I said, "No, thank you."
That's awesome. Keep going. All right. Thanks for answering, you guys. That's awesome. And the more you guys answer, like, the better, because everybody, like, it's not just us. So
Somebody
please.
needs to hear something that you have to say.
Yes.
And you have a voice, and that's part of this reopening Christianity, is recognizing that you have something to say. Something that you say is for maybe one person here, if that's all it is. If it's for all of us, fantastic. But if it's for one person, how many times have you listened to a preacher, a pastor? Well, that message was for me. I remember my wife said, "That message was for me." I said, "Well, it was for me too." But you know, you have something to say. It is valuable. You are valuable as a person to speak into somebody else's life, and that is so awesome.
Yeah. Double amen to that. Okay, so I want to just throw out a couple quotes to you guys before this next question because they're so good. So just thoughts, quotes from the teaching. Many of us would prefer the predictability of the past over the uncertainty of the future. Ouch. However, this one's good. Underneath every ounce of uncertainty exists an opportunity to trust in the certainty of God's promises. I'll say that one again. Underneath every ounce of uncertainty exists an opportunity to trust in the certainty of God's promises. And it kind of goes in with the question. Do you tend to think of the past, the present, or the future more? And then explain. So, do you tend to think of the past, the present, or the future more? And explain. Yeah.
So I personally tend to think of the future a lot more, only for the basis off of Jeremiah 29:11. Like, I know God has literally I mean, I am young, so I have a lot to look forward to, but that could be a huge part of it. But I know that God has so much in store. I know it is good. I have faith in that because I became a Christian during COVID, right? And I've been growing in my faith so much. So I'm like, God, more. I just want more of you, and I want more for what you have in store. So I personally just tend to always look in the future and just try to be joyful in the present, day to day.
Awesome.
I'm young too.
So the past few years, pretty much every plan I had made for my life kind of crumbled. So when I think about the past, it usually just brings me into a really bad spot of despair. And so then I try to stop thinking about the past because thinking about the past gives me fear about the future. And so then I go back to God's promises, and I just try to focus on his character and what he said about me. because that helps me live in the present. And also thinking back to like everything that had crumbled in my plans has allowed God to bring so much more fruit and growth into my life. And remembering all the good things that he's brought through the crumbling of my own plans helps me to stay focused on the present and on his faithfulness and on his character. So.
Yeah, no, please.
She's got it.
Raise them high.
You ran out of time, didn't you?
No,
We got time.
We're good.
To kind of bounce off what both of them have already said, I think a lot about the future, and I know that God has so much more in store for me. But I'll just say, because of things that have happened in the past, it can bring on anxiety, thinking, oh, but if I do that, then that's going to crumble too, or something else is going to go wrong or whatever. And I had one of those aha moments yesterday as my daughter is, starting into her second semester in college and saying, they're just throwing everything at me for the whole semester and it's just a whole lot. And I said, okay, but you've already gone through one big semester, so you've experienced a little bit of how that works. And so I said, everything they have thrown at you now is for the completion of the semester, but you are at the very beginning of it. You are being prepared to do well for the end of the semester. You say right now, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I said, you're right. Right now, you are not going to be able to do it well with what you have learned or where your mindset is right now. But God is preparing you. He has you in this place for such a time as this. He is preparing you with all of those tools to go forward and do well and to trust. And each step along the way will bring you closer to succeeding well to the end of that semester. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll listen to myself. Maybe I'll listen to that advice.
I teach at St. Clair College. I'm going to use that tape and play it tomorrow for my class.
There you go.
Well, in response to your question, I really had to think about it, but I think about the present more than the past or the future. And, in the morning, I can honestly say we get up and say, well, what do you have today, Lord, And maybe it's just to play Scrabble with my boyfriend here, and, or maybe it's Tuesday and I get to go to the women's home. It just seems like every day there's something fresh, and I'm just enjoying the present. Yes, there's a lot to the future, and there's many things. When you live to be, anyway, there's many. There's many things in the past.
She's older than I am.
Oh. So anyway, I just like to what do you have for us today, Lord, for me today? Hallelujah.
That's why they call it a present, right? It's a gift.
Did I miss somebody? Oh, sorry.
Hi. Mine's definitely the future. I see a bright future coming up for me. I'm going to be a grandma, and that's a new experience. It's going to be, so I'm excited. Yeah. And I can't wait, and plus my younger son is getting married, so, and it's his 30th birthday today. Yeah, so life is starting to look really good for me, and I'm excited. And like my family is really supporting me, so I see them coming to the Lord, like my siblings, because they ask me like certain questions now about God, and so I have a feeling they're going to be around me a lot because they're going to want what I got. So I'm very grateful for everything.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
So I'll pretend that there's no camera to my left, and I'll pretend there's nobody else in the room.
Just close your eyes.
Yes. Okay, so I feel like I just need to share. So just because of where I'm at in my journey, I'm thinking about my past a lot, but only in order to bring some healing and closure, and just learn, from my choices and from my mistakes, and be able to move forward and make better decisions. That's all.
Awesome. We just have Graham, and then I'm going to jump in real quick.
This requires standing, I suppose. Who here drives a car? Hands up, way up. I see lots of hands. Okay, great. There we go. 2 cars. Okay. What is it that you have in front of you when you're sitting behind the wheel? No. Oh. Okay, what do you have in front of you? Windshield. Great big windshield, right? So driving is almost a present, past, and future. You're doing it all at the same time. If you notice that the windshield is what? A big expanse, right? In most cases, you have to look to the left and to the right to see out at each end of the windshield. But then you have this little thing, it's about this wide or so, that catches your eye periodically, especially if you pay attention to it. And what does that tell you? What's already happened? It's behind you. It's in the past. So you have this wide windshield in front of you, which shows you what's happening right now, right in front of you, but also what is way down the road. The future. That's what's happening. You're going to get there at some point. So as a result of that, you're driving in the present, the past, and in the future. So when we have that little tiny mirror there, we look in the rearview mirror, how much time do you have to spend while you're driving looking at that mirror? Not much time. And if you spend too much time looking in that mirror as you're trying to go forward, what may happen? You end up hitting something, or you end up in a place where you didn't want to be, right? So you don't spend a lot of time in that little tiny mirror. Use that from a memorial point of view. Look at it every now and again to have an opportunity to see where you've been. But your future is this big expanse in front of you.
Yeah, I love that completely. Yeah, I do want to add a little bit because how do I want to say this? So when you've had a past where there's a lot of abuse, dysfunction, damage, whatever you want to call it, I think sometimes you kind of have to not sit in it, but spend some time processing it so you can be in the present and the future. So there might be seasons where you're not hanging out. I don't want to say it like that, but where you're more processing the past. Again, so you can be in the present and looking towards the future, because sometimes we get stuck in the past because it's been so damaging, and it's okay. It is okay to stop, time out. I need a month. I need 6 months. I need a year. I need 5 years. Y'all, sometimes it's so damaging, you need more than that. However, God is such a God of the present and future. He's a God of all of it.
He's in the past, he's in the present, and he's in the future. He's a God of all of it. So we can ask him, God, where were you in that? In the past. Where are you now? And where are you going? What can you tell me about? And he's not going to tell us everything because he likes surprises, right? He likes to surprise us because he's a good dad, right? So he's not going to tell us everything because then it would take some of the fun and the joy away. And that's why he doesn't tell you everything, I think, anyways. It's not to harm you and to drive you crazy, although sometimes it feels like that, you know? But he's got good gifts for us. But just please don't be afraid to go, hold on, time out. I have a pain here. This keeps happening in my life. I keep getting into these similar relationships. Why? Because there's something in the past that hasn't been healed. So please don't be afraid to talk to pastors, talk to a counselor, like talk to a good, solid friend, like Christian, please, okay? Because we got to process that stuff. We got to cry it out. We got to forgive. We got to heal. Let God heal this. Or we can't be in the present or the future. That little mirror is going to look a lot bigger if those healed hurts, unhealed hurts, and things like that aren't healed. It's going to look like that tiny little rearview mirror. It's going to look like it is the windshield. We want it to shrink, but the only way we can have it shrink is if we do process. Fair? Number 4, we got to move on. We don't have to. I mean, we can stay on this question for the next half hour, but we've got like 6 more, so we can just kind of, answer some more. Next.
When you reflect on your life, do you feel God has been faithful to you? Explain.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. When you reflect on your life, do you feel God has been faithful to you?
There's a sound you like to hear.
That's the best.
This is my little guy.
Yes. Oh, is it on? Hi. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. When I look back on my life, God has definitely been faithful to me. I'm still here today. That's a miracle. He's had me through my darkest days. He's been there when nobody was there, where I was lost. He was there. He was the one holding me. He was the one that made sure I'm still here. And when I felt that I didn't deserve my heart's desire, he gave it to me.
Amen.
I was trying to come up with different scenarios that I've experienced, but I just keep going back to one, and that kind of summarizes most. During a time of, I'll just say, a lot of turmoil and a lot of emergencies, and having to contact people constantly to take care of the kids and stuff like that. In emergency, I would be in a panic, seemingly, but learned the discipline of getting information together, and then the one emergency, I literally was running up the stairs, I'll say grabbing laundry, grabbing the kids, trying to figure out how to get out the door, and literally God just stopping me and saying, are you going to keep doing this on your own effort, or are you going to trust me? You still need to take the steps, but not in anxiety, but in trusting. And like I said, so many other scenarios just, I'll say, boil down to that.
Personally, for me, God has always been faithful based off the fact that when I was not faithful, when I was disobedient my whole life, even when I just started becoming a Christian, when I was a baby, the fact that I was so lost still, and I'd seen videos of me in the past where the way I would talk and the way I would act, and it's crazy how literally at my lowest times, even when I rejected God every single day, he still pursued me. He was still faithful. He still restored the broken, even when I never even acknowledged him, but he was chasing after me that entire time. And to me personally, that showed that he was always faithful. And it was just me being unfaithful my whole life. And it's just his promise over our life that he is always faithful. And we just have to endure to the very end. And the most faithful thing he's done is on the cross. No matter how difficult life is, it's just that everlasting life that he has in store for us. That's faithful enough. We don't deserve anything more than already he's provided, but he still chooses to bless us and take care of us every single day. And that just shows, like, God, like, you are so beyond faithful. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, Savio, I can agree with you. I was going through life without God for a very long time, without giving any details. I was living a very secular life, and he kind of let me do my own thing, and the further I walked away from him, the more trouble came my way. Like 4 years ago, I never thought that I would be back in a church. And now I'm sitting up here with you guys. But like even now, like with blessings, like I was supposed to get laid off 2 days before Christmas. And I reached out for prayer, and I found out on a Friday that I was supposed to get laid off, and by the next Wednesday, I found that they found me another position to go to, and it was like, I'll take it. Like, even the small blessings, it's just a reminder that He's faithful.
So absolutely, God is faithful, because in every circumstance that has come and like that the enemy has meant it for evil, like God always brings something good out of it. And even in the middle of it, like God gives you the peace and the strength that you need to like get through it. Like there's so many circumstances that I have gone through and my family have gone through that we don't know, like you can't explain how you get through things that are extremely painful or difficult. You just do, because God is sustaining you. He's holding you in His arms. Like you're not walking, He's holding you. And when you get past it, even if you're not in the place where you would have liked to be, it's still so much better than what you could have thought. So absolutely, God is faithful, even when we don't recognize it.
Yeah, that's good. I know with me, I did not have the peace I should have for those 4 days, thinking I was going to get laid off. But that was just a reminder. Like I got a lot of things to work on. Like, and being in the Word is definitely probably one of the most important things you can do. So you can be reminded of His promises. And
God is calling us all to do that.
Yeah.
So, like the Israelites, a flawed view of the past can lead us to mistrust of God's promises of the future. Is there a particular promise of God that you have a hard time believing? And explain. Like the Israelites, a flawed view of the past can lead us to mistrust God's promises of the future. Is there a particular promise of God that you have a hard time believing? And explain.
So I guess mine would be, I'm not sure if this is a promise, but God's unconditional love, because of the upbringing. I didn't have a father that gave unconditional love. It was very conditional. He was a minister of a very strict religious church, and we had to follow certain things and do certain things in order to gain that love. So I remember, I don't know, I had been through a lot of stuff in the last little while, and I was driving to church for the first time in quite a while, and I just said, I was broken, okay, and I said, I gotta feel your tangible love. I said, it's not tangible. And I actually felt like we were arguing. He goes, yes, it is. no, it isn't. Yes, it is. But on that way, that day, it was like it was made for me. It was I had turned the radio on to Christian music, and it was all about God's love. And then I went to and I did go to a church, and the service was while they were singing, the one gentleman that was leading worship, actually he wasn't even, but he was led. He was a worship leader, but he was just in the audience, and he was led to go up. And all of a sudden, the song was, he felt prompted to sing, "Oh, How He Loves Us." I was just a mess. And then the service, it was just crazy. It was this, a particular lady had gotten up, and she had a very similar testimony to mine. And she was just, showing how faithful God is, and, that, we do have a place in his kingdom no matter, what. But it was crazy. Like, so I don't know. It's like ask and you shall receive. And, I needed his love that day. I didn't continue I still continued to, dabble in whatever I was doing, but I needed that day. And yeah, he is faithful, 100%.
This is something in general that we pray for things and we ask God for things, and we expect God to be a 5G phone. He's not. He's God. We're not. He's going to do it in his time, his way, not your way. Get over yourself. Calm down. Relax. It will come.
The next question, what is one thing about your past that you can repurpose and bring forward? I don't know if you remember in the video he talked about repurposing something in your past that you can bring forward. So not everything, obviously, from our past is like ex-nade. Give that some thought. So what is one thing in your past that you can repurpose and bring forward?
I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I remember an incident that happened, and it was words of wisdom of my grandfather. And it was, there was just a situation that happened, and it happened right, like, moments before I spoke to him, and it was with another family member. And I said to my grandfather, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, he hurt me. And Grandpa would always just be sitting at the kitchen table with the window so he could see the town. And he looked up over, and he'd be reading, and he looked up over his glasses at me, and he said, "Forgive him." It wasn't a conversation, it was a statement. And he went right back down to reading. And that was it. I didn't understand. That made no sense at the moment. But bringing that forward many times, now as a Christian, I completely understand it. But I have to revisit that often.
Yeah, that's good.
I have a grandfather's story too. In the 70s, Larry and I borrowed $10,000 from my grandfather. And about 15 years later, it still wasn't paid back. And we were going through a really tough time. And Larry had said to Grandpa, you've given us so much money. What do you want us to do? And he said, whether you pay it back or not, remember this day, and when you can, pay it forward. He said that in the 70s. Wow. So we have always gone back to that. And he ended up tearing up the note. We never did pay it back, but we've always heard his words that when you're able, do something for someone else.
That's really good. Kim, there's right in front of Miss Jean. Yeah.
In keeping with the theme that everyone has a story, everyone has a past, everyone has some sort of hurt or trauma that they may be working through or have been blessed to have been able to process and put to rest, I feel like that is always an opportunity to bring that forward. That's part of your story, that's part of your testament. That's nothing that you did, but it's part of the process and who you are. So I feel like we always have that opportunity to pay it forward, and maybe there's something that we are uniquely sensitive to that can speak life into someone else, and that could be what brings someone else into faith and help heal someone else. And I think that's always a good thing to come forward, to be patient and be kind and be that person that you wish you had in that moment going forward.
Yeah, Pastor Larry will often say, to quote you, he'll often say, like, your story isn't really about you. Like, your story is actually for other people. And to be really vulnerable here, at first I'm like, what? It's not about me at all? Like, oh, you know? But then I'm like, as God's like revealing to me, I'm like, oh, Pastor Larry's right. So, you know, really, like, the stuff that we go through in our life is to really bring life and healing and freedom into other people's lives for their past, present, and future. So.
Well, I don't normally talk too much, but
Proud of you.
This, just for me, like, that one kind of touched me, and I just felt like I had to kind of share that I come from a past of a lot of mistakes that ultimately landed me in the hospital in liver failure, and by a doctor I was told I had 3 months left to live. I was completely broken, and I'm not going into it, but God gave me another chance. He's given me this chance to have a future, to look to the future, and I'm so blessed and so humbled by that. So I had to share that.
Good job sharing. Oh, you know what's funny? This goes right into our next question. Check that out, Alex.
Oh, yeah. Let's go. Yeah. According to Exodus 32 to 33:17, we read that even though the Israelites sinned against God, he gave them a second chance. God always gives second chances when we call out to him. Do you agree or disagree? Agreed.
Is there a why?
All in favor?
It does say explain.
Does anybody want to explain?
Second chances. I just think of all the times that, like, I've heard the Lord and felt him there, and I'm kind of, no, not yet. And I just felt that he was always there pursuing me, and I was always like putting my hand up and saying, no. I feel like I always have to give up something so much and stuff to follow Christ. And even though that was been going on for a lot of years, he was just always pursuing me. And so I just feel like I've had so many second chances over and over again. So I'm just thankful.
How does that saying go? Fall down 7 times and get up 8? Not sure who said it, but
Falling forward. Great. Very much what she was saying. I can't even put a year to it now, but initially accepting Christ, like going up for an altar call and being told, now get yourself, I think I was at a conference or something, get yourself into a Bible-based church and get yourself water baptized. And literally, in the moment, saying, okay, that's great. That's what some religions will do, but this is good for now. And just, that's it. And I went up for that kind of an altar call probably 10 times minimum, and 10, 15 years. and the second chances, the third chances, and then emphatically having a conversation or an argument with him. And he told me, get to my church. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I won't go into all of that, but being led here, literally. And came in, it was a Wednesday night, and had service or had worship, and then they did the baptismal call. And my spirit just flew. I was like, oh, this is what they were talking about. And that thought was was like there. And then all of a sudden I was in baptism. And then how many years later, I was helping in baptism ministry. It's like, yeah, lots of chances.
Just the way I got saved was a second chance. I gave my life to God when I was 12, and I was at this. We were going to a Spanish church. I don't speak Spanish. Just saying, I don't speak Spanish. We were going to a Spanish church. The first time I felt the Holy Spirit kind of calling me to give my life to God was at a Spanish conference, church conference, and I was afraid to go up. I was looking for like my mom or my brother, somebody I knew to like go up to the front with me. Because again, I don't speak Spanish. It's all Spanish. I wasn't even 12 yet. I was 11, turning 12. And I was scared to go up. So I couldn't find them, and I did it. And at the end of the night when we went home, I found out that my brother had gone up with my mom to give his life to God. My brother is my twin. So that hurt on multiple levels. Because I wanted to go up, and I didn't, and he had gone up, and I hadn't. So then I felt like that was like my once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like, when am I going to get another chance to give my life to God? I was 11, turning 12. And then like maybe 3 weeks later or so, at the Spanish church we were going to, they did an altar call, and I had been like sitting close to the translator and had gone up to the translator and given my life to God. So that is my second chance at just giving my life to God. And I remember, like, honestly, it doesn't matter if you speak the language or not. God speaks to your heart. Because I didn't know what I was doing. Like, really, I had no idea what I was doing. But I knew I had to do whatever it was that was being presented in front of me. Like, I felt it in my spirit. I had to say this prayer. I had to do whatever it is that is happening. So, yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we've got, I think, about 6 minutes. So we're going to move into our last question, and then we'll close out in prayer. So we're going to end with the first question. And I really wanted to say this. I was like praying, God, please give me time to say this, because it's like pivotal for me in a joking way. So if you all remember, the first question was, are you moving forward or are you going backward? And so in the story of the Israelites coming out of Egypt, they're out in the wilderness, and they start complaining. And they're complaining, and they start to say, well, oh, like you brought us out here to die, and it's, why don't if we could just go back to Egypt, we had all this food and meat and garlic and bread and fish and cucumbers and food. And you keep reading, and God has already given them quail to eat, and he's like, okay, I'm going to give them bread in the morning to eat as well. I have to ask God, why did he give them things after they were complaining? But that's just like a parental thing I got going on over here. And he was also giving them water out of a rock. Okay, now purification. right? So like water coming from a rock, like probably the most purest form of water ever, besides what the water was in the Garden of Eden. Anyways, sorry, tangent. So the food. So they're like, oh, brothers are here to die, blah, blah. The food was better in Egypt. But God's like giving them this food. They don't have to do anything. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I've got 3 teenagers, 2 are boys. They're starting to eat a lot, and they're working out. And I don't like to cook. Okay, so there's a lot of leftovers in my house. And so I'm going, seriously, God? Like you just rained down the quail and made them this bread that apparently was like cake. Hello, I could eat that probably for 40 years. And this fresh, beautiful, amazing water. And I'm going, yeah, why were they complaining? Anyways, a little side joke. But like, that's kind of to go back to normal. Do we want to? What was back there? What is he doing now? What, all these questions, like, what was he doing then? What was God doing in our past? What was God doing before COVID, during COVID, and now? God, what are you doing? What were you doing then? What were you doing during? What do you want to do now? And what are we talking about for the future? Do we really want to go back for some food? Is it worth it? Or can we hold out with God for that promised land? The land that is flowing with milk and honey. I will wait. I'll wait for eternity. I'm not going to go any further without God. They couldn't do it without God in the wilderness. We can't do it without God. We can't. We'll get lost. 40 years in the wilderness. But I'll wait out. I'll hold out. I don't want to go back to food. I'm going to wait for the milk and honey in eternity. Whatever's going on in eternity, I want it. But we can't get there apart from him. So, last question. Or the first question. Whatever you'd like. Are you moving forward or are you moving backward? Or we can reword it. Specifically, what would you like to move forward with God in? How about we answer that one? What in your life, it could be a little bit, it could be something huge, it could be a vision, it could be, you know what, I just want to drink more water. Great, don't do it without God. I'm going to meditate more. Great, don't do it without God. So answer that question. Pastor Larry.
So, you're talking about the Israelites and whatnot, and I'd like to take that story just a step further, because the Israelites had already had a glimpse of the promised land. Grapes, clusters of grapes so large that they had to put them on a pole and carry them between men. And God says, I am doing a new thing. So if I think about the reality of, do I want to go back to the old? No, I'm sorry. If the promised land is any reflection of what the new thing is going to look like, I think I'll go for the new thing.
Anybody else? One thing. Yeah.
I would definitely say my future would be in recovery and sobriety with Christ. My past has been a whirlwind, and it almost destroyed my life. And I found Christ, and I was saved the day, July 26, 2002, that I showed up the front steps of Windsor Life Center. And they have changed me. They've introduced me to Christ. I'm a follower. I was baptized at this church on October 30th. And I just cannot wait for the rest of my life to be with Christ and to live as a Christian. I still have a ways to go until graduation. And when I walked through those doors, and I traveled a long way to be here, and I had no idea. I'm from Alberta, Calgary. I had no idea what I was in store for, and it's a beautiful gift.
As you were talking about traveling far and showing up at the door, what were your other wordings? What else did you say? How did you word that? Showed up at the door. Front steps. Travel far. Graduation. It was always like God, it was like the Holy Spirit's like, yeah, that's everybody. That's not just you. We're all on this long journey. We get to go to a graduation. We got to show up at the door, right? Like this whole, I'm like, whoo, she just talked about everybody right now. That was awesome. Okay, I think we're like out of time. That was awesome. Thanks for like joining in the conversation, you guys. Well done, everybody. Well done.
Thank you. And just to sort of sum up, whether you're moving forward or moving backward, God's calling us forward. And I think he's calling us in 3 ways. God is calling us forward, and he's calling us in 3 ways. He's asking us, go deeper with Jesus, go deeper in the Word, and go deeper with others. And that means community and relationships. It can be your family. It can be this church. It can be all kinds of your sphere of influence. And those are the things that will propel us forward into what he has for us. I'd like to thank this panel here. I got the honor of working with Kim and Alex. Got to know them a little better, and they're great men and women of God. And thanks, Pastor Larry, for opening up and sharing. Thank you for being transparent and being part of this, because it couldn't have happened without you, quite frankly. Thank you. Oh, and we need to roll the bumper for the next one. Oh. Okay, so the next session, which is in, 1 month, am I a consumer or a contributor? So we'll all look forward to doing a forum similar to this. I'm sure you have some great people that'll be facilitating that, and they'll be awesome. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna